Hey guys, welcome back to Jessin Reads Romance. I'm Jessin. Today I'm going to be doing a mid-month wrap-up for October. I know that it did not do an October TBR, but honestly, I think it was for the best because I did not want to feel pressured to read. You know, there was a lot of new releases coming in October. I knew I wanted to read them. I didn't know if I was going to get to them as soon as they released, and I really didn't. Some of them I did. But speaking of new releases, I think we should just kick it off with the new releases that I think most people are the most interested to hear my opinions about. So we're going to start with those, which include Caught Up, Obsession Falls, and also Hopeless, which I just finished. I wanted to finish that today before I did the mid-month wrap-up. That was one of my goals, and I met it, and I'm honestly so proud. The past couple of days have been a lot of me like getting my shit together and trying to get back on top of things basically, and I've just been very proud of what I've accomplished for this very long weekend that I've had. I feel a lot better with where I'm at right now. So anyway, let's start off with Caught Up by Liz Tom Ford. You guys know that I absolutely love Mile High and The Right Move. The Right Move, still one of my favorites for the entire year. It is absolutely beautiful. So of course I was really excited for Caught Up. We got a little bit of a teaser in The Right Move because the hero Kai is friends with Ryan, and he comes to their new house, like whenever they're housewarming, and he's thinking about moving out of the city because he does have a son and he's a single dad, and apparently he doesn't like any of his nannies. So we knew that setup was there going into Caught Up. And then when she announced, you know, the date, the cover and all that, it was going to be a nanny romance, and it's also going to be the coach's daughter. So we have lots of interesting little conflicts already popping up just with the tropes there. And anyway, very excited about Caught Up. I didn't want anybody's opinion before I got a chance to dive in. I didn't want to know anybody's rating or anything, and I was very happy to say avoiding Instagram during that time when I did have work while it was released, and Instagram stories and stuff was perfect, and I wasn't spoiled for anything. So that was really great, and I appreciate everyone who may have wanted to DM me about it and they withheld. Thank you so much for respecting that. So like I said, Kai is a single dad to adorable little Max. He is a little bit over a year, and we find out a little bit later that he had no idea that he had a son until Max was already 6 months old. The mom is not in the picture, so she's not an issue throughout the whole book, which I appreciated. I didn't want it to be an issue. And he's just trying to do his best. He thinks that he's kind of failing at being a dad. He's a little bit overprotective. That's why he fires his nannies. They're just not working out. I also really love the relationship that he has with his head coach, Monty. Monty, who was also a single dad, and he really understands like the struggles, was working with Kai, making sure that they had everything that they needed so that Max could travel with them. Like, they made an exception because family members normally can't travel throughout the season, and they made an exception. The team made an exception for him to be able to take Max with him. They even outfitted the back of the plane so that Max could have like a play area and a sleep area and everything. So everyone's really accommodating, and Monty knows that Kai still has a passion for the game, but he is kind of threatening to retire because he feels like he can't juggle both. He doesn't have anybody reliable to watch his son. And Monty makes a suggestion because his daughter just announced that she's going to be taking a little hiatus from her job during the summer months. And he says, I have the perfect person. It's my daughter, and you can't fire her. So we need to make this work. You have got to stop firing people. You can't fire her. Kai has the misunderstanding that she is like a teenager, just because the picture that Monty keeps of his daughter on his desk and carries with him is of her in her teenage years. So he's unaware that she's a full-grown adult. She's 25. So Miller is specifically a pastry chef, and she has made a name for herself. She's recently won the James Beard Award. She's been recognized as up-and-coming, innovative, and what her job is, she goes into different kitchens around the world, and she basically overhauls their dessert menu, their pastry menu, and she does not claim the recipes that she comes up with, but she is known, like, she came up with this recipe, but now the restaurant kind of like owns them, and she'll work in certain places for, you know, a couple months at a time, and then she'll move. She actually pretty much lives out of her van, which she's outfitted almost like a food truck. She has a sleeping area plus like a little kitchenette and stuff like that, and she travels all the time. She has been having almost like, you know, what you consider writer's block. She's having a tough time creating new things. She can't come up with any ideas. The simplest thing for her, all of those simple desserts are going around dry. She can't make a souffle. It's completely collapsing on her, and she has one too many things go wrong. Plus, the straw that broke the camel's back was a douchebag in the kitchen that she was currently working at harassing her, and she was able to get out of the contract, and she was just like, maybe I just need the summer off. You know, ever since I won the James Beard Award, I've been signed up to do all these things in the future, and the pressure's kind of getting to her. So she decides she's going to go hang out with her dad. She misses her dad. She doesn't see him a lot, and we'll get into like what the conflicts are, because I will be talking spoilers for this book for sure, but I'll let you guys know once I get into the conflict. So their first meeting puts them off on the wrong foot intentionally, I think, or at least I myself knew that he was gonna have some sort of issue with the new nanny. He wasn't just automatically gonna like her. Well, he meets her before he knows that this is Monty's daughter. He's in the elevator with his brother Isaiah, who they play on the same team, and Isaiah, I found out, is going to be the next book. I thought for some reason Rio was going to be the next book. I thought somebody told me that, but he's the last book, I think. I don't know. Anyway, he and Isaiah and Max are in the elevator, and a woman steps on. It's 9 o'clock in the morning. She's holding 2 Coronas, and he is like, what the heck? He's drawn to her. He thinks she's very pretty. He notices her thick thighs. I'll circle back to that in a minute, because I think it was repeated way too much during the book. Like, I get it. She has thick thighs. Gotta love a thick thigh woman, but he was obsessed with them. So he's attracted to her. Isaiah's also like noticing that she's beautiful. He's a bit of a man whore. He's a lot of a man whore. And his son Max, who's very iffy about new people, is like fascinated by her immediately. Partially maybe to do with like her tattoos. She has a sleeve and stuff, and she constantly wears these overalls with like a bandeau underneath. And so Max is kind of like trying to throw himself at her, and Kai's trying to keep him back. And he's silently kind of judging her for drinking at 9 a.m. Come visit Louisiana. We have our breakfast cocktails, mimosas, and Bloody Marys. That is pretty much normal. Not every day, but you know, sometimes when I go to brunch, I'll get a Bloody Mary. Anyway, so judging hard for drinking beer. And this was literally the morning after she had that whole run-in. So like, she's been stressed, and she's going to talk to her dad. And not too long after that, he goes upstairs after Monty makes his announcement, hey, my daughter is gonna be babysitting. Here she is. She walks through, and he's like, you, absolutely not. She will not be watching my kid. And she's unfazed. She's just like, oh, baseball daddy, you're the person I had a feeling was gonna be you. And yeah, I'm totally fine with watching your kid. You don't even know me. Like, she's just unfazed by him being very like confrontational and like not wanting her to babysit. And Monty basically forces his hand, being like, you're gonna let her watch Max for this game and see how it goes. Like, she'll get like 1 strike, whatever. And if she does something completely wrong, then it has to be justifiable. Like, I have to okay this, or else I'll veto your reason. So he forces Kai to give her a chance. So this is how it starts. It has a bit of forced proximity because she is traveling with the team with them. She's always going to be in a room that is adjoined to his, so that she can be there to watch Max whenever he needs. So this is where I'm going to talk spoilers, because I want to talk about like their specific conflicts, Miller's conflict and Kai's conflict, which play off of each other, and mostly to talk about like the pacing of the book, because I do feel like generally the pacing is off. This is not spoilers yet. I do feel like generally the pacing was off. I hit around 20 to 30%, like around that mark. I was invested in the background of these characters, the setup with the whole, you know, Kai being picky about nannies. All totally okay with that. I was just waiting to get a little bit more into the story and for it to gain some momentum. Unfortunately, around like the 30-ish% to the 60% mark, I felt a little like the pacing lagged. Like, it was just, the scenes weren't that engaging, and most of it is on the road scenes, but I just felt like the pacing just was off, and I'll talk about specifically like why I think that is. And then we hit the 60% mark, and it picked right back up. Like, I was ambivalent about them as a couple at that point, and at 60% I suddenly was like, oh my god, I can see them as a couple. Like, I'm invested. The things that Liz Tomforde, like, it felt from 60% on in the book, it felt like I was reading the same type of book as Mile High and The Right Move, where I was just like swooning over them as a couple, swooning over their scenes together. The stuff that Liz Tomforde writes was so beautiful, and that's how I felt about the latter half of the book. So it was just a very weird experience for me. Now let's talk about spoilers. Miller's conflict. I don't think that the way that it played out helped the pacing. So she is having difficulty creating the high-end stuff. Obviously, she feels a lot of pressure. One of the reasons why she even went into this career, obviously she was good at cooking and she got, scholarships and did all that, and she started getting accolades. She feels like she has to pay back her dad because Monty is not her biological dad. He was just dating her mom before her mom died, and her mom on her deathbed asked Monty to adopt Miller. And he was actually in the baseball world. He gave up his college career to take care of Miller and took like a low-paying community college, like coaching jobs, stuff like that. And it's only been in recent years, since she's been 18, she's been on her own, creating a name for herself, that he's reintegrated himself into the baseball world, become a coach for a major league baseball team, and he's back in his happy place and stuff. And so she feels like she owes it to him to make her life worthwhile, to make his sacrifice worthwhile. Like, she has to be successful in order for his sacrifice to mean anything. So she has obviously some things that she needs to work through in regard to that, because her dad truly just loves her, wants her to be happy, and does not feel like he gave up anything to be with her. He loves her so much, and that's just an issue that she has to work through. And the problem is the shine of like being the best and stuff is wearing off. She's not happy about creating these crazy desserts that are just like mind-boggling. She actually likes the simpler things. And I think that this is where, for me, the pacing falls apart, because if it was, and I don't know what's wrong with me, why do I not feel the same passion for these types of desserts anymore? I don't know what's wrong with me, let me take a break. And then she gradually starts rediscovering her love of the simple things, like the chocolate chip cookies. She ends up by making like banana bread with Max and stuff like that, like the little things, baking for the team and stuff, like these simple baked goods that anybody could make. But from the very beginning, we know, because she states that she is not attached to any of these high-end recipes that she makes for the restaurants. She's fine to give them up, but she will never give up her simple chocolate chip cookie recipe. So we already know that she's actually more possessive over her simple recipes, that she'll never give those up. And I wish that that was more of like a rediscovery moment. Like, oh wait, I actually do love, like maybe it's been so long since she's cooked anything simple and she rediscovers it, but we already know the solution to her problem is she doesn't want to work in fine dining anymore. And the solution is open her own fucking restaurant, because she already has the clout. People know her name. If she opens a restaurant, people will come and swarm to get her baked goods. Even if they are simpler, they probably will like it better because the everyday average Joe can afford to eat the dessert. So like for me, the conflict was there was such an obvious solution to her conflict. I was like, just open a bakery and sell the shit out of your stuff. You've made a name for yourself. It's not like you're a no-name person. You go and do the interview for the food magazine, say, I plan on opening something for myself, and boom, it's like an instant hit. Food bloggers around the world are going to come and you'll be an instant success. So for me, the conflict was just not great. Not that I didn't enjoy like the journey, like once she actually started cooking for Max. There was a wonderful scene where Kai actually gets all of these ingredients together, and he was like, everyone's gonna come over because you said like your passion is cooking for people. You love to see how your food affects people, like that's why you cook. And the team's coming over, your dad's coming over, and you're gonna cook for them, and you're gonna draw inspiration. And he was trying to get her out of the rut, because that whole time she had been avoiding cooking and avoiding trying to make new recipes that she needed to do. Like, she had a deadline at the end of the summer. She needed to be able to come up with certain recipes for her food magazine interview or whatever. And he takes her on a date as well to like this other like bakery and stuff like that. Like, there was so many wonderful scenes that was her rediscovering her love of food and what brings her joy, going back to the basics and stuff like that. And I feel like that could have been incorporated from the very beginning if it wasn't so obvious from the beginning where she needed to end up. Because at the end, she does end up by opening her own bakery, which is so funny because the person who she wanted to work with in LA, she goes work with her toward the end when they've kind of like taken a break from their relationship, they've broken up or whatever. She's going back to her world because she still doesn't get it. She still doesn't get that she doesn't need to make a name for herself. Her dad's still gonna love her. She goes work for this lady, and the lady's literally like, what are you doing here if you don't have a passion for it? Like I, left my career for years to have my daughter, and I rediscovered my passion for cooking through her, and I wanted to return, but I need to have work-life balance. But the kitchen, this high pressure job, this is what brings me joy. This is what I like to do. I don't like cooking for myself or for my family members. Like I'm exhausted by the end of the day. Like that's not my passion. If your passion is the people and connecting with people, then this is not going to be a job for you. Why don't you open your own store? And she's like, I never thought of that. I'm just like, what are you doing, Miller? So her conflict, the way it was playing out, did not work for me. I think it made the middle part slower because she was just avoiding. She was just avoiding trying to make new recipes. And I just felt like she was just on hiatus. She didn't want to think about, what was waiting for her. Her manager, her agent or whatever kept contacting her like, oh, have you done new recipes and stuff? And she's like, yeah, no, not at all. Just babysitting Max and stuff like that, which cute scenes on the road. And honestly, that middle part where it was slow for me was the part where Kai was struggling with trusting his son to somebody else and acknowledging that she was actually good with him and letting go a little bit of that overbearing helicopter parent tendency that he had. That was kind of what that middle part of the book was about. And then by the time that I started getting really engaged, he was already like enamored of her and loving that they were felt like a little family unit at that point. And that's when I started getting invested in the book, when he was doing all these things to help her rediscover her passion and try to get her back on track, even though he knew that it meant she was going to leave him. Because he can say it till he was blue in the face that Monty does not regret giving up his career. Until she believes it, she's just not going to want to hear that. She's not going to want to hear it from other people's mouths that what is so obviously the truth is the opposite of what she had been thinking this whole time. So I actually really liked that we do have time where she leaves. Like she knows she's in love with Kai. She knows that she is already dreading going back to work, but she still has in her head that she can't give up this career, that she's worked too hard to stop now. And so she does leave. And Kai lets her go because he knows he has to. He wants her to be happy. He has to let her go. And I like the fact that she goes to work in that restaurant and she feels how empty it is. Sometimes it does take a little bit of self-discovery and being like, I thought I wanted this, but this feels horrible and I hate it. And then she returns and she does this grand kind of gesture thing in her magazine interview, which that was like one of my favorite parts of the book, was actually when it's at Ryan and Indy's wedding. It's happening in their backyard and he's missing her. Max is missing her. He goes inside to go to the bathroom, but he sees the magazine that's not supposed to be out for like another couple of days sitting on their coffee table. And of course he's like, oh my God, he's been trying not to text her at all. And so this is like a glimpse of Miller that he's been missing. And he goes in and he reads the article where she just kind of like, I'm so excited. I'm making a career change. I'm going to be with the people that I love and everything. That whole article was absolutely beautiful and brilliant. And I loved it. I ate it all up. And then she shows up, right behind him. It was just beautiful. So like, it was good. It was good. And like I said, her and Monty, so Monty actually goes to LA to reinforce like, hey, you're never a mistake. Like I always wanted you. You were like my greatest accomplishment. I don't regret a thing. You don't have to prove to me anything. And I want you to be happy. Do what makes you happy, not because you feel like you need to make me proud or prove that I was worth it or you were worth it to me. So again, so much of the book that I loved. But like that middle part, I can't ignore that from 30 to 60%. That's a 30% chunk of the book. That's almost a third of it that I was bored for. And I was just kind of like very ambivalent towards them as a couple and what was going on. I was just bored with the scenes. So that made it hard to rate because I still liked it, but it was by no means my favorite. The Right Move I gave 6 stars, Mile High I gave 5 stars, so I'm just gonna give this one 4 stars. It's my least favorite of the series, but like it was still good. It was still a good book. I just feel like we had a bit of a speed bump in the middle of it. So yeah, that's what I thought about Caught Up. Very long, rambly review for that one. Obsession Falls is a spinoff from the Bailey Brothers, and also the Bailey Brothers are connected to the Miles family series as well. So a lot of interconnected series, but you don't have to read them to understand them. Most of them are family sagas. The Haven brothers, the Havens used to be rivals, town rivals. rivals with the Baileys, and I was so excited when she announced that she was going to be doing a spinoff. At the end of the book, she does have an author's note saying that her original plan for the Havens obviously changed. If you didn't know, Claire lost her husband suddenly a couple years ago, and that's whenever she was wrapping up the Bailey brothers. So her original plan for the Havens kind of was not working when she actually sat down to write it. So she decided, and I believe the whole series is going to be like this. I'm pretty sure it might be the first book. I might be misquoting her, but I think the whole series is going to be like romantic suspense. So it has like a suspense element, a little bit of a mystery throughout the series. So our heroine, Audrey, she has gotten laid off from her job. She's had a difficult time trying to find work, and she has to move back home. And the town that she's from is right next to Tillicum, which Tillicum is a town that the Bailey Brothers series is set in, and they're neighboring towns. And she finally gets a job at the local newspaper, and it's in Tillicum. She and her mom have an interesting relationship. Her mom's a widow, and her dad was in politics. Her mom's just very obsessed with like appearances, and she doesn't want like the town to know that her daughter is struggling and stuff, because her daughter, Audrey, had been, you know, an overachiever in school, part of all the clubs. She was valedictorian and all that, so it feels like embarrassing for her to have a daughter who's like a failure. So she's just like, I can't live with my mom for very long. And finally she's looking, and this rental house pops up in Tillicum, and she's like, oh perfect, just got a job there, I'm gonna rent that house. And her first night, and she has a dog named Max, who's a little bit of a goober. The first night she arrives there, she's so excited to be out the house with her mom, and she's about to go take like a nice bath, and this man just barges into the house. This is Josiah Haven. He and his dad do house flipping, and he's actually flipping the house next door, and this was a property that they had that it's easier to rent than it is to sell. He had no idea that his sister had just signed a new lease agreement, and so he thought that the car that was packed to the brim, looked like someone's living out of their car, is the new renter, and he thinks that it's a squatter. So he barges in because he has a key, and he sees her in the bathtub like naked, and it's just like a funny, just like humorous little moment. He apologizes the next day, and Josiah is like such a grump, and his backstory is at the very beginning of the book, he was going to propose to this girl that he'd been dating for 2 years, and at the dinner table she announced that she had just taken a job that was on like the East Coast or whatever, so she was going to be moving away, and she never really loved him. Like, she didn't feel like the need to discuss, she didn't want to make their relationship work, and he felt like he'd invested so much time in her, thought that they were going to spend their lives together. And I believe that this was like the second time that this had happened to him, like in a relationship. Plus he has mommy issues. His mom actually left. His stepmom is what he considers his mom. So he has kind of like abandonment issues, and he hasn't had a relationship since then. So he's been like this lonely, grumpy man who he even lives in a house that he bought with the intention to fix it up, but he doesn't even put any work into it at all. So like, it's so sad. He just goes home to this like hovel basically, and he's alone a lot of the time. And that contrast with Audrey, who's very sunshiny personality, her goober of a dog, Max, also brings like some lightness into Josiah's world. And I just like that she worms her way into his life, and he just like accepts it, and I just love it. He reluctantly is drawn to her, and their relationship is honestly just really soft and sweet. Now, as far as the suspense element went, it was fine. It was like a generic suspense element. She is getting some threatening notes, and come to find out she had a stalker. She has a stalker. So throughout the book, we're like, who's stalking her? What possible reason could they be stalking her for? Why are they threatening her? And Josiah is obviously very protective, does not want her to be alone and stuff, which I like what the stalker situation does for the relationship. I wasn't necessarily like dying to find out like why she has a stalker. So that was just okay for me. So I ended up by giving this book 4 stars. Relationship, cute and sweet. The climax that involved like the revelation of who the stalker was and like why they were doing this it felt anticlimactic to me. I was just kind of like, okay, that's fine. I just want my characters to end up happily ever after, and they do. And they're super sweet and cute. So I'm still excited about the rest of the Haven brothers, and I'm interested to see if she keeps up the theme of like romantic suspense throughout the rest of the series. And now Hopeless. So I just finished this like couple minutes ago. I think from the very first time that I read Flawless, I wanted Bailey to get an HEA, and I was so excited when we found out that Bailey and Beau were going to be together. Bailey is a part of the Jansons. The Jansons are pretty much the town fuck-ups. They are up to no good, drinking, drugs, stealing, just no good people. She's the only good Jansen. And honestly, I hadn't thought about this until now, but from the previous books, And I guess maybe it was from the point of view of just like our family, the Eatons, they've always looked at Bailey and been like, she's the only good one out of the bunch. And they never looked down on her at all. She was a bartender at their local pub that they always go to. So she was kind of like a constant figure in the background when they would go out to have fun and have drinks. And everyone was pretty like nice to Bailey. She was quiet, unassuming. So I just didn't get the vibe from the previous books that the town looked down on Bailey and was waiting for her to act like her siblings and her dad. But apparently that's the conflict for this book, is Bailey's having a difficult time being in the small town with her name being Jansen, and the other townsfolk looking down on her, not giving her job opportunity. She's looking to have a second job because she wants to get the F out of Dodge. She wants to go to school. So that's pretty much her conflict. Then Bo, who is being treated like a war hero. He is missing in action for a previous book, and he does come back with burns. So he was burned on his feet. So he has a bit of PTSD. And in the beginning chapters of the books, you can just feel like he has just lost his like luster for life. He feels quite directionless, to the point where he's supposed to be somewhere in the beginning of the book, and he was stopped on the street by like a random lady, and he's just so sick of hearing people like being like, you're a hero or whatever, and he doesn't feel like a hero. He feels like he's faking it a lot, and he just like, I just don't want to be where I'm supposed to be. And he ends up by going to the bar in the middle of the day and starts to drink, and Bailey serving him does not like question him at all, doesn't pester him, so he doesn't mind being there. But the town drunk that's also always at the bar after, you know, every day of Bo being there, he starts like pestering him until finally Bo just kind of like blows up to where Bailey's just kind of like, get out the bar. You're not gonna be acting like this. Like, absolutely not, sir. She goes outside and she's just like, listen, this isn't the answer. Like, you getting drunk, like, you're kind of acting like my brothers and my dad. Maybe let's rethink your life. And then she finds out that he has been driving after he's been drinking, and she's just like, no. I can't believe I thought you were smarter than that. You're coming back in and you're gonna drink some tea. We're gonna sober you up because you're not leaving. I thought you would be smart enough to drive a cab. So as he's sitting there sobering up, he's asking Bailey, he's just like, what nights do you work? Like, how many nights a week do you work? And she's like, you know, pretty much every night. And he's like, well, what nights do you close? Because like, you're alone in this bar. Like, what nights do you close? And she says like Sunday through Tuesday or something like that, or Saturday through Tuesday. And he's like, it's dangerous. And so he ends up by sitting in front of her bar Sunday through Tuesday or Saturday through Tuesday when she works, so that he's there when she closes. So it's like he has a purpose now. He's found something that he can do. He found something that he's good at, which is protecting, being a protector. And so he's starting this friendship with Bailey. So he goes there every night, he drinks tea, and he talks to Bailey. She's the only one that he really talks to, and stays until closing to make sure that she's safe. And I like the friendship that develops with Bailey, because she's the only one that he's like opened up to since he's been back. He's been avoiding his family. He doesn't even want to work with Cade. Like, he doesn't like ranching. So he's always blowing off Cade whenever, you know, they're supposed to be like working on the ranch. So I like that Bailey is his bright spot, and it's giving him something to do. It's giving him a purpose. So when he finds out that Bailey feels like the town pariah and can't get a job anywhere else besides the bar, and her brothers are making her pay rent, but like astronomical rent because they don't work, and so basically she's paying like the mortgage on their property and stuff like that. So she's just stretched thin. She's stretched thin and she cannot make it out of this town. They make kind of like, or Bo makes kind of like this bet, because she has mentioned that he has the Eaton effect. It's the Eaton name. It carries a lot of clout in the town, and he can, you know, blow up in the bar, embarrass himself like he did, and the next day come walking in smiling, and everybody forgets it and forgives him. But if she would do the same thing, they would chalk it up to her being a Jansen, and she'd be like persona non grata. Nobody would trust her anymore. So she has to like, she feels like she has to walk on eggshells. And so he kind of makes a bet like, well, why don't you take my name? Like, why don't we become fake fiancés? My family will get off my back if they realize that I've been preoccupied with a girl. You know, I'm not been wallowing like I obviously have been, and you'll get my name, the benefit of my name, and I'll prove to you that people don't look down on you, that having my name won't make a difference. You'll still be able to get like a job, whatever. So the reasoning for the fake engagement is not the most solid, but when are the reasonings for fake engagements in romance ever that solid? It's just one of those tropes that you just kind of like gotta roll with. I feel like marriage of convenience and fake engagements work so much better in historicals. They feel so much more believable. In contemporary, I feel like it's a lot harder to come up with a reason why these two would enter in a fake relationship, engagement, or marriage, whatever. So paper thin reasoning, but I was willing to excuse it. I was willing to roll with the punches because I do feel like Beau was hyper focused on Bailey being this only bright spot in his day and wanting to help her any way that he could. And it was basically just kind of like an excuse to try to help her. And it ends up by being a forced proximity situation because as soon as he puts this ginormous engagement ring on her hand, her brothers try to steal it and try to break into her trailer. She ends up at the river, which that's like kind of their meeting place. And he insists on moving her trailer. Like she doesn't want to like move in with him, but he moves her trailer onto his property so that she'll be safe and away from her brothers and he can keep an eye on her. So it becomes like a forced proximity situation. Also her trailer doesn't have any air conditioning and she's sweltering inside and he's always tempting her to come inside. I have an extra bedroom. Like, you don't have to sleep. Okay, Miss Independent, you don't have to sleep in your, hot as balls trailer. I have an extra room. And we're supposed to be engaged anyway. So maybe if he felt like he was rescuing her from her brothers, like if her brothers put her in danger, if they broke into her trailer trying to steal her tips or something, and that was the catalyst for a fake engagement, maybe it would have been a little bit better. But again, that wasn't the issue that I have with the book, because I did have some issues with the book, and it's very much a continuing issue whenever it comes to Elsie Silver. Buckle up. So we're gonna analyze like what I think, why I have not been connecting with her new releases, why I feel like they've not made the same impact as Flawless and Heartless have for me. After reading Flawless and Heartless, I went back and I read her Gold Rush Ranch series, which is the Eaton sister. She's a part of that series. So I went and I read those books and I felt like they got progressively better in that series. And then she had Flawless and Heartless, which Heartless is still my favorite of the series. I recently reread them as well after having read Powerless and Reckless. So they still hold up. Flawless and Heartless, I feel like they are perfectly perfect. Flawless is a 5-star, Heartless is a 6-star. It's my favorite. It's one of my favorite books, period. And I feel like the magic behind Heartless was such a smash hit. Everybody was singing its praises, and I feel like after Elsie Silver had such success with Heartless, she's like, how can I replicate that? And I can't fault her for wanting to replicate the same magic. Unfortunately, I feel like she's taking a lot of elements from like what she thinks like this is the reason why people love this book so much from Heartless and inserting them into Powerless, Reckless, and Hopeless, and some of those elements feel very out of place. And I personally think that she's hyper focused on the sexual relationship that was between Willa and Cade. It works so well in that situation because Cade is such a stick in the mud and Willa is such like a brash, say whatever comes to mind type of character, and she's always been that way. Like that's how she was in Flawless when we just knew her as Summer's best friend, and the conversations that she'd have on the phone with Summer, the things that she would text Summer being like, bang the hot bull rider who you've been crushing on. Like she was just so wild. She's always been a wild personality. And so when she comes to be the nanny for Cade, she's still wild. She's pressing his button. She's saying sexually inappropriate things that are funny. And it works for their relationship. It works so well for their relationship. They have a really hot sexual connection and kinky sex scenes. Again, works for all that. I had a problem in Powerless and Reckless with the way their physical relationship was portrayed. It felt like it just did not fit at all for those books. That was a personal issue that I had. So I was a little worried for Hopeless. The book started off so great, Hopeless. I was so into these characters. I loved that it felt like it was like a budding friendship to lovers type of situation, which a fake relationship and forced proximity situation, even if they weren't even fake engaged and he just like, you're gonna be my new roommate because I cannot stand you being in danger with your brothers, like even that would have worked. Just to get them to be around each other constantly, the way that they shared like their hopes and dreams, stuff that they never shared with anybody else before, like that felt like it was building such a great emotional connection, such a good foundation for a relationship. That was so well done. Loved it, okay? The problem is I felt like Bailey had a split personality. Like I said, when she was first introduced, of course she was, younger when we first meet her in Flawless by a couple years. She's only 22, so she is pretty young, and he's 34 or 35 or something. She's very quiet, very timid, very non-assuming. And when we first see her in the beginning scene, she was in her element in the bar, and she had no problem telling him what was what, to not act an ass in her bar and stuff like that. So she did feel like she wasn't like spineless, but she also didn't feel like she would be mouthing off, bringing up anal and porn and dildos every once in a while. Not every once in a while, a lot. A lot of their conversations center around anal, porn, and dildos. And it felt like such a random Willa interjection. Like she wanted that humor that Willa brought to the table with Heartless. She wanted to interject that here too. And so it felt like she was trying so hard for Bailey to be sort of Willa-esque, but only at certain times. Only when they were alone, basically. And I just felt like that it didn't fit her at all. It did not fit her personality at all. So I didn't like that. I felt like it was very weird. Before they're even fake engaged, that's whenever she brings up the anal. Like she's serving him and she's just like, have you ever had anal before? To Beau. And Beau's like, what the fuck? And she's like, oh, I was just wondering. Again, this was a random scene that I felt like was stuck in there so that Beau could go in protective mode, which I love Beau in protective mode. So like, not so mad at the scene, but it just felt random and also just kind of gross. Apparently there was a guy who was sitting at the bar who was watching in public anal porn and looking at Bailey, obviously imagining that he was banging her. So Beau had to go and tell him, stop being a creeper, you need to leave, bye, goodbye. But that's how she like brings up the situation. Not like, I feel uncomfortable, this guy is watching stuff. Like she was just like, have you ever had anal sex? I was just wondering what's the appeal for guys. Like, is that so much better? Like, oh yeah, the reason why I bring it up is this creeper over here. It just felt weird, you know? Then there was a scene where it's after they get fake engaged, and they already met at the river once, and at 2 a.m., 2:11 to be specific, it has personal significance to him. He cannot sleep. He always wakes up from nightmares at that time. He goes to the river and Bailey's there. Well, she's actually hiding because she overheard her brothers that they were gonna try to steal her engagement ring to pawn it off. So she snuck down to the river and they decide to just sleep under the stars that night. And they wake up and it's like such like a wonderful moment because he wakes up and he's like, that was the first time that I slept, you know, so good. And it was with Bailey, like cuddled up next to him. But I feel like the moment was completely ruined, completely ruined because he wakes up with a boner, obviously. Bailey wakes up first. Part of her personality or part of the thing that Elsie Silver injected into this story was that Bailey's a virgin, and only because she really hasn't found somebody who she really wants to have sex with. But she is constantly thinking about sex, especially with Beau. Once she and Beau like start becoming friends, she brings up sex all the time. She's almost a little sex obsessed. So while I do enjoy a good waking up with a boner and being like, what is that poking me? I kind of like it. Is that just because it's biology and it's the morning, or is he turned on a little bit by me? I like that aspect. And I wish they would have just woken up and it be a little bit awkward moment, like, oh my God, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to like shove my boner up your ass while you were sleeping. And she'd be like, oh no, that's fine, let's just not think about it. But no. It turned into like this weird, super sexual situation. Again, this is supposed to be a fake relationship. They have stated, which fake relationships always do. I was actually talking about this with Jen, where if there's a fake relationship or fake engagement or fake marriage, they always have to be like, we have to have rules. One of the rules is no sex. And I'm like, that's implicit in the whole fake aspect. Like, why do you actually need to throw that on the table? You know, we know that you're saying that so that later you can break that rule. It's a romance, you're gonna break the rule. So I just felt like that was kind of like, it's a little cliche to have rules that we know we're gonna break anyway. But the rules are there. Like, they just talked about the rules. And Beau has absolutely no problem being like, well, you can't tell me that you're not wet for me. I dare you to take off your sweater, because she's wearing like a sweater over her dress, and show me how hard your nipples are. And she does. And then he's like, show me how wet you are and stuff. And it becomes like super sexual. I'm just like, what the fuck? They haven't even kissed yet. It feels so weird to escalate to this point physically. It feels random, especially since all the moments that they have actually really talking to each other are so sweet. When they're not being overly sexual, when Bailey's not spouting off random I'm horny statements, their relationship is so sweet and beautiful. Like, I just don't understand why we need to be so crude for no reason. The fact that the first sex scene doesn't even come until 80% especially just boggles my mind when I think about how fast-paced she starts off their sexual relationship but waits until the first sex scene. I'm like, it would have been so much cooler, or it would have made more sense if the physical relationship was gradually progressing, if you were going to wait to have the first sex scene until 80% anyway. Because then it feels like you're just being so hot and cold. So once Bailey finally makes it into the house, her first night that she's made it into his house, he randomly like gets up. He knows that she's awake and he goes make a sandwich like naked, like just so that she can ogle his naked body. couple hours later, she's woken up because she hears him screaming, goes up into the bed. And I thought we were gonna have another moment where, you know, she wakes him up and he realizes that she's there in his house. He's had a nightmare and he pulls her into bed with her. And I thought we were gonna have another moment where I sleep better when you're with me, but again, it turns sexual. So he immediately like starts finger banging her and then like regrets it in the morning. So I'm like, well, what was the point of the scene if he was going to be hot and cold about it and be like, oh my God, I took advantage of you and, you know, I'm not supposed to be touching you, even though he was the one that been like, we're not gonna have sex and stuff. It just felt wasted. Like, why not just have a quieter moment where he sleeps better with her by his side? And then after that, she ends up by waking up purposely at 2 o'clock in the morning to wake him up before he even has a nightmare, and they go swimming every single night. So it just felt like such a wasted opportunity just to have some random ass spice being interjected right there, which I felt was completely just not fitting at all for the situation. So yeah, I skipped most of the sexual scenes in this book because I was just so turned off. Like, not every couple needs to be like spank me harder daddy shit like that, and that's what they were together. And I was just like, I get it, you're trying to recreate Willa and Cade magic, but it's getting old to me. And I wish that she would just trust herself, being like, this couple is good together and I don't need to have them have this like over the top sexual connection right off the bat and need to capitalize on every time they're alone together. We need to have something sexual happen between them. Like, she literally had an issue with being in public with him and him like hugging her. Like, she was like, but like in private she was fine with being like, come shave my pussy. And I was just like, it's so weird to think that she was just so like afraid of him being sweet to her in public and even like kissing her. They didn't kiss for like the longest fucking time, even though they were finger banging way before the kiss. Like, he was all up in her grill about that. And I was just like, it just doesn't make sense to me. So anyway, I ended up by giving this book 3.5 stars because like the relationship was still really good. I like the way that the conflict was handled in the end when she finds out that he was the owner of the bar all along, and she just feels like that was the one place that she had her job based on merit, and she really did have her job based on merit. She was already working there before Beau bought the bar, but it was fine because it wasn't really a breakup. I also like the fact that they really moved away from the town because like I never got the vibes that this small town was just very like mean-spirited and bigoted, but all of the townspeople that interacted with Bailey made me kind of hate the town itself. All I like are the Eatons in the town. The rest of them can go fuck off. So anyway, but it had to be part of the conflict. Whatever. Very small-minded individuals apparently in this town. So I was glad they actually moved to the city, and Beau decided that his passion was to be a firefighter, and it all worked out. So I really liked it. Or I really liked the soft moments of their relationship, and that was enough for me to still really enjoy the book while still being very frustrated while reading the sex scenes, which I just feel like did not fit. And that's a personal issue for me. I don't feel like hardly anybody else that I've talked to has any of the same issues, so, but it's not something that's going away. It's repeatedly been an issue that I've had since Heartless. And again, after rereading Flawless and Heartless again, I'm just like, everything about their physical relationships in both of those books completely fit with the story, and I have no issues with them whatsoever. So anyway, on to other books. At the beginning of the month, I continued with my binge of the Carsington series by Loretta Chase. Mr. Impossible was like one of the last books that I read for the month of September, and it was just so good. It gave me so many like the Mummy vibes, and I just absolutely ate it up. Ugh, loved it. And each book in the Carsington series is completely different from each other. So Lord Perfect, which is the first book that I read for this month, is the oldest brother. So he is the heir apparent. He's going to inherit the earldom. He was actually already married before, so he is a widower. And he has this godson. It was his wife's brother's son who he's kind of taken under his wing. He spends a lot of time with Benedict, and his godson has an obsession with Egypt and stuff. And he wants to be an archaeologist, and he has an encounter with this little girl who's also at the new like museum section to do with Egypt. And the little girl basically gets in a fight with him because she says that his drawing is shit, and he gets really offended, and she literally like pounces on him. So that's how Benedict meets Bathsheba. That name. I just laugh at it all the time. So Bathsheba is our heroine. Her name is Bathsheba DeLacy or DeLucy. I can't remember. One of them. But apparently she's a little notorious. The whole family is a little notorious. So there is the section of the family that's like the good DeLucy's, and then there's the section of the family that's like the bad DeLucy's. They're kind of like con artists and stuff. So she is also a widow. She and her husband and daughter had lived in Ireland. They both kind of were disowned from their family. They said like she, being like part of the bad DeLucy's, had lured her husband, who was part of like an upstanding family, away, you know, tricked him and whatever, but they actually had a really good relationship, and she has a daughter who's very outspoken. She wants to have a place in society for her daughter's sake. She wants her daughter to be welcomed and stuff. And she is an artist. So that's kind of how they have a connection. He reluctantly lets his godson take art lessons with her. And then the daughter like reels the godson into this kind of like this legend that her father always told her, that there was a treasure buried at like his family's land or whatever. And it's kind of like, you know, treasure hunting in Egypt for archaeological finds and stuff like that. And she's going to find the treasure, and he's like, well, I can't let you go alone. So anyway, they basically run away to go find this treasure, and that forces Benedict and Bathsheba to be together. And there's been lots of sexual tension between them previously, and now they're traveling alone together, trying to find where the kids are. But a big conflict of the story is that Benedict is literally Mr. Perfect. He can do no wrong. He's always done the right thing. She obviously has a horrible reputation. He shouldn't be associating with her. And so he's kind of fighting against like his attraction to somebody who's so notorious. And it just wasn't quite the most interesting story that I've read. I was a little bit bored throughout all of this. The children's antics were funny, but like a lot of the scenes were like interjections with them being on the road as well. And it just wasn't so interesting to me. You know, I just really didn't love them as a couple. They didn't interest me at all compared to the previous two books. So this book was only a 3-star for me. Still not horrible, but just not what I was used to. Next, I picked up Before the Sunset by Laura Pavlov. This is part of her Cottonwood Cove series, and this one I was actually very much looking forward to, because in the background we knew Finn, who was one of the brothers in the family that we've been following. He's an actor, and he's kind of been a little bit of a man whore, but he has a best friend who's a woman. Been his best friend for years, and her name's Reese. Reese has actually been away for the past year living in London because she had a career opportunity. She was engaged to a man who she's been dating since she was in high school, and when she had that job opportunity in London, he basically kind of called off their engagement. So apparently she was doing all the compromising, all the giving in the relationship. And right whenever she was set to come back home from being away from London for a year, she was assuming that maybe they would get back together whenever she comes back to Cottonwood Cove. But no, she hears through the grapevine that he is actually dating somebody who he once, like whenever they were on a break in high school, slept with or whatever. So it feels more hurtful that he's now in a relationship with this woman who he once had a brief relationship with. So she is like despondent. She doesn't not want to come home. Finn ends up by dropping everything and flying out to London to be with his best friend because he's so excited about her coming back home. And I really love seeing them together, like as friends, like just how much they were just there for each other. Reese also apparently had a history with cancer and stuff, and he's been with her throughout the whole time whenever she was dealing with that. Eventually we come to the trope in our story, which is the fake engagement. So he needs an image rehab because he almost slept with a co-star who's batshit fucking crazy and now is saying that they were in a relationship, they were supposed to get married, like all these lies, and like trying to like blacklist him just so that she can get some airtime. Nobody's really buying it though, and he needs an image rehab basically just to like show people like, no, I have moved on, because she's kind of like saying that maybe they're gonna get together because they shoot a TV series together. So he's like, let's enter into a fake engagement. People can get off my backs about this stupid co-star saying that we're probably gonna get together, which is absolutely not true. And you can come back home and shove it in your ex-fiance's face that you've moved on, and he's probably gonna absolutely hate the fact that you would be in a relationship with me, you know, the best friend that was always there and stuff. Now the issue that I have with this book is that Reese, her ex, I have a problem when authors create ex-boyfriends or girlfriends who are so awful. It makes me look at my main character being like, what did you ever see in them? Because they're so blatantly awful, not like sinister in a like a you know, in abusive situations where you're being gaslit and stuff like that. That's really not what was happening with Reese and her ex-fiance douchebag. He just always expected her to do the heavy lifting in the relationship. When he wanted to move, she had to move. He was so focused on his career but didn't care about hers, and as soon as she took a you know, opportunity for herself, he was immediately like, well, I don't want to do long distance, so like this isn't we're not even going to try to work it out. Let's not get married at all. Let's break up. But Reese pines for him. Like the whole time. She pines for him for way too long. She thinks that he's going to get jealous enough to want to come back to her, and she was going to accept him back. So I was very, very frustrated with her as a character, wanting him back. Like if it was just payback, I just want to shove it in his face and I want to make him regret it, but like I never want him back because I'm worth more. I wish that was how it was with her, but she wanted him. She wanted that douchebag back so bad. Ugh, it was gross. So anyway, that really just upset me that she sold herself short like that. But their relationship was cute. Finn and Reese's relationship was cute, and I liked when she stopped focusing on the ex and was kind of like, oh damn, Finn is right in front of me. He's hot, he's loyal, he's my best friend. I belong with him, and that was really great whenever she finally realized that. So I gave this book 3 stars. It was fine. I also read Twisted Lies by Anna Huang and Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross, but those are my Patreon exclusive vlogs, so I'm going to gloss over that and not talk about it until like the end of the month. The next book I picked up was Wed to the Lich, which is like the 8th book in a series that like different authors write in, and maybe this is the 2nd or 3rd one that Layla Frost, this author, has written. And I've never heard of like a lich before, but basically he's just kind of like a skeleton man. And these covers are really beautiful, so I was interested in reading this. They're just kind of like smutty monster romances and stuff, and actually this romance was really sweet. The heroine May is very like timid, and as soon as she has married this guy who she's been magically matched with, most people that see them together are like, feel like she needs to be rescued, because apparently liches, they can like feed off of people's energy if they want to, and most of them don't. They can feed off of energy, period. It doesn't have to be human energy. They don't have to kill you or take your life force or anything, but there's always that threat that they could do that. So like everyone fears him, and his name's Virgil, and he's really like, both of them have insecurities about their body. He knows that he's like unattractive and he's weird. He's a skeleton man, and she has been brainwashed by the orphanage that she was in to feel like she was fat because they made extra money by making the girls dancers and stuff like that. So she was always shamed for eating, and so when she's rescued, he feels like her life force is so weak and he wants her to eat to survive, and she's just like not getting that she needs to eat to survive. She just doesn't want to disappoint him. She doesn't want to eat to where she is no longer desirable to him. So that's pretty much the conflict between both of them, and I think it's really beautiful that they both realize that they're attractive to each other just the way that they are. It was just like a soft and sweet romance, and I was a little bit confused by the description of his body though. I just know that he's a skeleton man, and especially like, you know, that anatomy, I was just kind of like having a hard time picturing what it was. Okay, I'll just say that. So I can't explain it any better. After having read the book, I was just also confused by the description. It was fine. It was a fine book. It didn't do anything for me. I didn't have like any revelation about it. It wasn't like my favorite monster romance of all time or anything. It was just fine. And then finally, I picked up Not Quite a Lady, which is another Harsington book in the Loretta Chase series. I like this one a lot better. I just found the characters to be way more interesting and the story to be way more interesting. So Darius is another son, and the dad in this series is notorious for being like, he has too many sons and he needs them to find wealthy heiresses to marry. Apparently he's like diabolical because he's been setting up all these matches without making it look like he's setting up all these matches. So he sets a task to Darius, and he's like, I'm gonna give you this property that has been neglected for so long, and you have 1 year to make it profitable, okay? So Darius has a plan. He's like, well, I'm just gonna live out the hotel and I'm gonna focus on the land. Who cares about renovating the house? I'm just gonna make the land profitable and pay for itself, and all I have to do is accomplish that in a year. I think it could be doable in order to prove my father that I can do this and kind of win our little bet. But he runs, and whenever he's surveying the neglected land, he runs into the lady of the neighboring estate, Lady Charlotte Haywood. And interestingly enough, this book actually starts off from her point of view, and this was many years ago, 10 to be specific. and she's in labor. She just had a baby. So Charlotte had a baby when she was 16 years old. And her stepmom, who is only like a few years older than her, has helped her keep this secret. So she thought she was in love. She got taken advantage of by this stupid dude who apparently is notorious for taking advantage of women. And so she had a baby in secret. Her dad doesn't know. And she's currently 30 or 31, and her father's finally being like, I think it's time for you to get married and stuff. Like, I want to see you happy. He's a really loving father. Like, he's not trying to like pawn her off, but he does think, hey, it's time. I want you to be happy. You've been taking care of me and your stepmom and your new, you know, little half brothers and stuff. It's time for you. I want you to have a family. I know you want that and everything. And like, she's dying inside because she's like, I have a little boy. She thinks that the boy died. And she's like, how do I find somebody when I marry them? They're gonna know I'm not a virgin. Like, what do I do? So she's having like all this turmoil inside. Her father has planned that there's going to be a big house party, basically, that he's going to invite a lot of eligible bachelors and stuff. But luckily, Darius enters in the scene. She doesn't love Darius. They kind of butt heads a little bit, but like in a playful, bantery type of way. And when he goes to meet Charlotte's dad, just like, you know, being courteous and stuff, he gets roped into letting the stepmom and Charlotte help him with the house. They basically are like, why would you live in a hotel whenever you could be living in the house and employing the people of the village? Like, you need to make jobs for the people around you and stuff like that. And you need the house to come to life if you want the land to come to life and all that jazz. So he kind of gets roped into actually spending money on the house, which he didn't want to do. So it forces him and Charlotte to be in proximity a lot of the time. And I think that their relationship was very delicious. Like, it was very tension filled. You could feel the attraction from the very beginning, and he was just wondering like, why is she unmarried? She looks a lot younger than she is, and he's just very intrigued by her. And I like how their relationship plays out. And there is like another suitor who's a bit of a rival and stuff, and we get some points of view from him too, which is interesting. So I like that one a lot, and I gave it 4.5 stars. It's probably my second favorite in the series. Mr. Impossible still edges it out. That one was just so much fun. You just can't beat that one. So I think I have one more book in that series, and then I'm complete, and then it's done. Just one more brother, I believe. Okay, and that is it. That is my mid-month wrap-up. I'm so glad I did a mid-month wrap-up because I talked a lot about, especially the new releases. I had a lot to say. So I'm glad that the month will be split into two so that I don't have a monthly wrap up that's like 2 hours long. Anyway, if you like this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you're not already subscribed to my channel, make sure you subscribe to get notified on any future videos that I do. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, life's better with a little AGA. Bye guys.